Well, because I love you all so very much, I thought I would give you a bonus video for today. Thanks for clicking on to the Saturday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Yes, I don't often do a European Outlook at the weekend, but I thought there was plenty of things going on at the moment, and I kind of wanted to slightly kind of touch more on what I was talking about in yesterday's video. I felt as if I didn't really give off as much as I would have liked. My wife actually came in with a chippy for the dinner, and I thought I didn't want the dinner to get cold, so I actually cut the video shorter than I would have hoped to do. But I have time. I've just recorded the tropical outlook. I hope you can check that out. There's quite a bit of detail in that, showing you a few other things that hasn't been shown so far in the tropical outlooks, which are typically done on a Saturday afternoon. So do check out the tropical outlook. That will be released after this video. So there is plenty of content for you to delve into. Also, tomorrow, the live stream, 4 p.m. as usual, we'll be looking at all things global. But before we continue with the video, I would greatly appreciate a like on the video. Hit that subscribe button as well. There is a lot of content getting thrown out there to you free of charge. It is a busy time here on the channel, but I'm noticing the views continuing to rise, the subscribers continuing to rise as well, and a massive thank you to everybody for your support. But actually, I'm going to be looking at this in a little bit more detail in tomorrow's live stream, but I wanted to show you something here. This is a new toy that I just discovered in a video during the course of the week here. This is of the Nesdis Star. This is World Vegetation Health and the change in the last year. So this is a lot to do with agriculture and planting, etc., etc. And there's a lot of different variables to be thrown in there with regards to the planting and whatnot. A little bit over my head, but nonetheless, I'm trying to show you things differently each time to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting, and also to look at different perspectives. And I thought this was a very, very interesting chart to show you with regards to vegetation health index. So this is an improvement or worsening of soil moisture in the last 12 months or so. This is the global picture, and we'll look at this in a bit more detail tomorrow. You can see areas that have gotten worse, so areas that are more likely in drought, but also areas that have improved. And one of those areas that have improved is western areas of Europe here. Now, obviously, we've had a significant amount of rainfall up and down much of Western Europe in the last 12 months. So we notice here, this is the comparison for the British Isles. If we look first and foremost, this was this time last year, and you notice here quite a lot of kind of yellowy, orangey colours there showing up on the UK map. This is the current situation, and you notice a significant improvement anywhere from the south coast to the north coast in terms of vegetation. So, like I said, you have to kind of remember that this has got a lot of different variables thrown in. This is basically satellite derived soil moisture and the vegetation health. And this is, like I say, this is current, and this was the same time last year. So a big improvement in terms of vegetation between now and last year. And I just thought that was a very, very interesting little graphic to show you, and an interesting comparison as well with regards to rainfall in the last 12 months or so. So anyway, let's move on and look at the ECMWF. This is the 500 millibar geopotential height and mean sea level pressure. So this is dam in terms of upper level height, and also mean sea level pressure in millibars here. So you notice here we've got the quite strong ridging over the central North Atlantic, very, very typical for the time of the year. This is extending back to Friday at the end of last week, so obviously yesterday. Now, notice here a couple of interesting take-homes. Very strong ridging, especially across the south central and southwestern United States. We've had quite a lot of strong winds distinct jet crossing over the northern United States, southern Canada. We've got an area of low pressure to the east of Hudson Bay at the moment here. We've also had a lot of high pressure over the central North Atlantic at the moment, and that has been the mainstay for the first half of June so far. It has been a chilly start to June across much of Western Europe here, especially the northwest of Europe. And I'll show you a tweet in just a second because I actually forgot to show you that in yesterday's video. But I want to play through this loop here, and I discussed this in quite a bit of detail back on Thursday's video, talking about the Manchulian Oscillation rotating out of the Pacific into the Atlantic and how that is now starting to change the mid and upper level pattern across the mid to high latitudes. So we've had the negative Arctic Oscillation, negative North Atlantic Oscillation, the phase 7, 8, and 1 of the MJO. That is now continuing to progress eastwards into the Americas and into the Atlantic Basin. That has influence further north, and we are seeing significant changes taking place in the pattern. So this is just a slightly different perspective of what I showed you back on Thursday, but nonetheless it has the same fundamental overall aspect to it. Notice the ridge of high pressure starting to slide eastwards over the United States. Now what that is doing is we are sending a trough into the western half of the United States, so we're cooling things down in the west, and in the northwest in particular we could see some mountain snows and significantly below average temperatures in the Pacific Northwest, etc., etc. But what we are also starting to see is changes now starting to take place further east, out of North America into the Atlantic Basin, and consequently the western side of Europe. We're starting to see the changes. Now this is the current situation. Saturday the 15th, we've got an area of low pressure stuck over the UK and Ireland here. We're going to see areas of rain rotate around this area of low pressure, this circulation. We're going to see bands of heavier precipitation moving through across the north and across the south over the next 24 hours or so. But watch what happens as we see this area of high pressure. Pay attention to North America, and as we see heights rising over the eastern half of the United States as we progress through the upcoming work week, as we see the heights rise, we're seeing an increase in strength of jet now starting to move away from North America and out over the North Atlantic here. Remember, we've had high pressure dominating the North Atlantic for the past week, 10 days, even past 2 weeks. Now, what we are going to see is as this high builds, we're seeing cooler air across the north raise the contrast between hot and cold air. As we do so, like we would see in the winter time, that means that we start to activate a more west to east jet stream that's extending away from North America into the Atlantic Basin. So therefore, we're starting to see changes taking place. Now look at the high building, blossoming over the eastern half of the United States. We are going to see some very, very significant heat moving into the eastern side of the country. Low, mid, even upper 90s for a good 3, 4, 5 days, anywhere from North Florida all the way up into New England here. But what we are seeing is as the high moves into the eastern United States, we are seeing the trough drop into the western and northwestern US, but we're also activating a stronger jet, and therefore the trough over Canada is going to start to slide eastwards along with that ridge. As it does so, it's going to then start to reconfigure the upper level pattern, and notice that we start to see a trough developing over the North Atlantic. And as we start to see heights lower over the North Atlantic and up into Greenland, we're then going to start to see heights rising downstream over the UK and over Ireland. Now, it's not going to be a clear-cut heat wave moving in for the UK and Ireland. It's a lot more complicated than that. We've got an old trough that has to then kind of start to split. We notice here one branch going north and one branch dropping into Spain and Portugal here. But nonetheless, what we are starting to see is as this trough then moves out of Canada into the North Atlantic, deepens over the North Atlantic, we're then starting to see the high then split one branch over the western North Atlantic, extending into the eastern United States, heat wave conditions here. And we're also seeing the secondary high, that is the Azores high, start to migrate northeastwards, filling the void as the atmospheric pressure pattern starts to adjust. And as we move towards Thursday of next week here, you notice the high starting to kind of push its way towards the UK and Ireland. But notice here that we've still got that legacy of trophiness over Biscay, over France. That could be having influence in the southeastern United States, or southeastern UK, should I say. But notice here, as we continue to play through the ECM 500 millibar pattern here, there's the high starting to exert its influence on the UK and Ireland pattern. Therefore, southwesterly winds and warmer air might still be somewhat unsettled across the UK and Ireland here. We have to appreciate that. But nonetheless, we are seeing a significant change in the overall pattern, and we should start to see something warmer moving in. Notice here that as we continue to play through towards Sunday of next weekend, we've got areas of low pressure now in place where we had with high pressure, and you notice here there's the area of high pressure now starting to become much more summer-like reflection, if you notice here, across the United States, across the central North Atlantic, and extending into Spain, Portugal, and France, with a deep area of low pressure northwest of the UK. So we could start to see rather unsettled conditions across the northwest of the British Isles, cool, unsettled, windy across Scotland, for example, and further south, warmer, drier, and sunnier across the southeast. We could see that distinct textbook northwest to southeast contrast over the UK as we move towards next weekend. This would be the 23rd of June. So therefore, I'm becoming quite optimistic that we are going to see a more typical summertime pattern moving into the UK during the final 7-8 days of the month here. So it will certainly be interesting to see going forward here. Looking at the UK specifically and Europe specifically, we can see the changes taking place here. Let's have a look and see what the ECM GFS ensemble, is indicating in terms of the upper air pattern week by week. So this is the upcoming 5-day period. You can see here the trough in place, continuing to see below average temperatures as a result. The 6 to 10, there's changes starting to show up. We're starting to pull the ridge from southeastern Europe westwards here as the trough then gathers out over the North Atlantic, and as we move towards the 11 to 15, there's ridging across the UK. Notice here we don't have this blowtorch look by any stretch, but nonetheless we're starting to see the adjustments taking place within the upper levels of the atmosphere. In terms of temperature, normally upcoming 5 days looks like this here. The 6 to 10, we're starting to see the turnaround. So notice the difference between the day 1 through 5, which is average to below, especially across Western Iberia and the UK and Ireland here. The 6 to 10, still below average slightly across parts of France and across Western Iberia. We're starting to see the turnaround now showing up in the UK and Ireland, and the 11 to 15 day, again, nothing overly hot. You notice that here. So it looks as if the below average June is likely to be the case here. It's likely to cement itself. We will look at July, by the way, next week in the European outlook. So we're going to look at that in a bit more detail here. But nonetheless, rather interesting times to come. In terms of precipitation anomaly, this is back to the ECM weeklies here. This is the upcoming 7-day period. You notice here quite wet northwestern Iberia through France, Low Countries into northern Germany, kind of hit and miss across the UK, slightly wetter across the south and the far north, drier in between. Into week 2, with the high building out of the Azores into southwestern Europe, we're exerting a dry reflection across Iberia, across France, southern UK, and obviously with a trough gathering North Atlantic up towards the north of the UK. We've got wetter anomalies across the north, drier across the south. That is a classic Azores high pressure pattern. And then into the following week here, this takes us probably into the first 8 days of July here. We don't have a particularly great signal, but drier than average across the south, possibly wetter across the north, but we'll wait and see what happens. But interesting times certainly coming up here, folks, and I hope you can join me here on the channel if you are interested in all things weather, interested in understanding the evolution of pattern change and the dynamics behind that. So do check out the tropical outlook. There's a lot of interesting things going on at the moment here with the tropics. This is finally the overview precipitation, cloud temperature and pressure of the GFS. You can see here the area of low pressure dominating the pattern at the moment here. Windy conditions across the far north and across the far south, less so underneath the center of low pressure. We are going to see an area of large scale rain moving across the northern side of the circulation into the north of the UK through the course of tonight. That then will spin around, move into the central belt as we move into tomorrow morning. But you notice here that underneath that rain, with a lack of wind, we could see some fairly decent rainfall totals mounting up. So we'll keep an eye on that here. That kind of spins around, stuck in place with high pressure surrounding it as we move into the course of next week here. And then we're kind of in a no man's land, neither high or low pressure dominating the pattern here. And then we start to see changes taking place with fronts moving in from the northwest during the course of mid to late next week here. We need to keep an eye on a little feature here over the Bay of Biscay that may have influence on the southern UK mid to late next week, so we'll keep an eye on that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the rest of you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you hopefully with the live stream coming up at 4 p.m. tomorrow. And do indeed check out the tropical outlook as well. Bye for now.